In a forgotten corner of the moorlands, where even birds dared not fly, stood Witherstone Manor, half swallowed by time, weather, and rot. It loomed like a relic of sorrow, a place where nature had lost interest and decay reigned supreme. The townsfolk of nearby Danwick whispered of the manor in hushed voices, calling it Hollow House or the Widow's Grave. No one had lived there in nearly a century, not since it stayed behind. But in the autumn of 1873, Elias Witherstone purchased the property for an insulting pittance, eager to escape the smog-choked streets of London with his wife, Margaret, and their curious, pale daughter, Elspeth. A scholar of old architecture and an admirer of Gothic revival, Elias saw only potential in the crumbling mansion. A restoration, he claimed, would breathe new life into it. The villagers watched from behind shutters as the family's carriage creaked past, drawn by jittery horses and driven by a man who would never be seen again. Upon arriving, the family stepped into a house thick with cold and silence. But in the grand salon, beneath a cracked portrait of a long-dead woman in mourning garb, they found it, a cat, jet black, with fur like lacquered velvet and eyes like shards of cursed emerald. It lay on a rotting chaise lounge as if it owned the room, its tail flicking lazily, its expression unreadable. "Poor thing," said Elspeth, gently stroking its sleek back. Velvet blinked slowly and purred. The sound was deep, hollow, like wind blowing through a crypt. "She must have belonged to the previous owners," said Margaret, frowning. "How is she still alive?" Elias chuckled. "Cats survive anything, especially old ghosts like this one." They named her Velvet. They let her stay. The first few days passed in eerie quiet. The air never warmed, despite roaring fires. Dust never settled, yet never disappeared. Velvet followed them silently, sometimes disappearing for hours only to reappear in places she could not possibly have entered. A locked room, a sealed attic, behind a mirror. Margaret began to wake with deep scratches on her back, tiny ones at first, then longer, angrier. "Nightmares," Elias said. "You're doing it in your sleep." Elspeth never seemed to sleep at all. She would sit with Velvet in her lap by the fire, whispering things no one taught her, in languages no one remembered. Then came the cellar noises. Every night around the same hour, just past 2, came a sound like dragging, wet, heavy dragging, and then scratching. Always from below. Elias, growing more irritable by the day, blamed rats. "Tomorrow," he said on the 7th night, "I'll trap them myself." He never returned from the cellar. Margaret found only his boots at the top of the stairwell. They stood upright, as if he had simply stepped out of them, but they were filled with thick, black blood that reeked of rust and soil. Velvet sat beside them, licking her paws, her purr rising in pitch like a dirge. Margaret wailed and fled to the village, but no one would open their doors. "We told him not to go up there," they said. "Told him that house eats more than wood and stone." Margaret returned alone the next morning. She found Elspeth sitting by the fire, Velvet curled in her lap, both watching the flames. "Elspeth," Margaret whispered, voice hoarse, "we have to leave." "No, Mother," the girl said without turning. "Velvet says we are part of the house now. It won't let us leave." Margaret tried to seize the child, but Velvet hissed, a terrible sound, like bones grinding, and leapt. Margaret stumbled backward, claw marks blooming across her face and chest. The cat landed lightly on the floor, eyes glowing. As Margaret fell, she saw her daughter smiling faintly, one hand still stroking Velvet's spine. She screamed all the way down the stairs, but no one came. No one ever would. Years passed. The Witherstone name vanished from public records. The house, once again abandoned, seemed to slouch further into the earth. But at twilight, villagers sometimes spotted a light flickering behind the parlor window. And always, always, the cat was there. Velvet never aged. Her fur remained perfect, her eyes as sharp as broken glass. She prowled the empty rooms, her tail leaving behind trails of soot. Sometimes she would speak, though no human tongue could decipher the sounds, moans, murmurs, clicks, and growls that made dogs howl and infants cry. In the attic, Elspeth remained. Her skin porcelain pale, her eyes ringed with shadow. She no longer needed to eat, nor sleep. She sat in silence beside the withered corpse of her mother, who had tried to hide beneath the floorboards. "Velvet feeds on memories now," Elspeth whispered to no one. "She chewed father's bones. She drank mother's voice. She keeps me safe so long as I dream for her." On moonless nights, Velvet grew larger, twisting through doors not meant for living things, her mouth stretching across her face, her eyes glowing like sick lanterns. She would roam the halls, devouring anything unfortunate enough to wander close. Fox, bat, vagrant, spirit, all fell to the velvet moor. They say if you approach Witherstone Manor on the last night of autumn, you may hear the distant sound of purring, low, thunderous, like an engine from the grave. And if you knock, the door will creak open for you. You'll feel warm for a moment, safe, welcomed. Then you'll hear the soft sound of claws on wood, the glow of twin emeralds in the dark, and a girl's whisper like wind through dead leaves. She's always hungry.